Here we
Yeah,
go.
thank you. All right, well, welcome everybody. I see Pam Hodge and Anna Weichsel. I don't see Dunya anymore, but I know she's here. Maria is here, and I am here. So there are 5 of us for the meeting. Thank you all for attending. Let me go through the agenda quickly, and then we'll go back and go through it slowly. I want to give you an update on the TGM grant status. That's Transportation and Growth Management grant. Then I want to just touch briefly on the Parks and Rec operating levy, because I have to correct something I told you before. And then I want to mention Brentstock incubators, and Anna can fill us in on the grant proposal and what it is. A little bit on Flavel Drive speeding. We have an email from Scott Cohen, who's a planner at the PBOT, and he has a couple of things to tell us. We'll look at the Ogden Knapp Greenway slow streets area near 52nd. And then touch a bit on the situation of trees in Brentwood Darlington. And I want to bring up the Smell My City air quality reporting app, which I addressed in the little newsletter, and encourage you all to get it. Talk about, and then I want to just tell you a little bit about an argument that's going on with regard to the residential infill project. And I'm just going to touch on it because we'll do residential infill later on. It's not going to be in place until August 2021, and there's some other things I need to get more conversant with first, but I'll tell you about this water meter thing. And then I want to talk about the commercial lot at 52nd and Flavel, and wind up with, or close to wind up with just a review of things to not forget about, even though we're not going to be addressing them here. And we'll bring up any other business we have and then adjourn, and maybe we even get out before 8:30. That would be nice. So is there anything that anyone would like to add to the agenda before we get going? Is there something critical that you feel that we should insert?
No, it's Stephanie. I'm just thinking, since it's Dunya's first meeting here, that maybe she might let us know, Dunya, what brought you to the meeting this evening.
Oh, yes, thank you, Pam.
Oh, of course. I think, yeah, I unmuted myself. I live on, I've been in Brentwood for 16 years. I moved in right when my second daughter was born, so I always have to remember how old she is. And I'm on 70th and Ogden. So I've just been really interested, and I've been home since March, basically. I work exclusively at home, and I've just noticed things with the traffic. Every night we hear motorcycle, we just hear traffic's changed, and more families are moving in, and I have time now. And I'm interested in being involved in what's going on with our streets and with traffic and whatnot.
Well, welcome.
Yes,
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Pam, for suggesting that. And we have been joined by 2 more people that I don't believe we know, Peter Swinton and Nancy Chapin. Nancy, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us what kinds of things you're interested in and what's brought you to the meeting?
Well, I've been a Brentwood Darlington resident since 1988, and I've managed to come to a few meetings occasionally. And I just got the invitation to this one today, and I thought I'd just pop in and see what's happening in my neighborhood.
Oh, wonderful.
I'm actually on the board at Woodstock Community Business Association, so I have that that connection too. So
wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Southeast Uplift, Nancy, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah.
And Peter Swinton, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, my name's Peter.
I recently moved to the Brentwood neighborhood with my wife and bought a home, and we've really enjoyed it so far. I'm an urban planner by trade, so I wanted to get involved with the land use committee and see what's going on and how I can pitch in.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you very much. So if you're an urban planner, you understand zoning intricacies.
Yeah, I can work through them for sure.
Oh, that would be wonderful, because every time I get into the zoning here and the overlays and the this and the that, it just makes me crazy. I don't understand it at all. So I would welcome your help as
Sure.
we encounter different situations here in Brentwood, Darlington. So, all right, well, welcome Nancy and Peter and Dunya. That's lovely to have you here. So let's go on to the TGM grant update. TGM stands for Transportation and Growth Management. It's a planning grant that the City of Portland obtained for our area from the Oregon Department of Land Conservation and Development. And it's to be an 18-month planning effort that covers the area of Woodstock neighborhood, Brentwood, Darlington, Mount Scott, Arleta, the southern part of Foster Powell, and the west part of Lentz. And the idea is to study the transportation, to look at what the economic situation is here, with an eye to possibly rezoning certain areas to encourage business or the development of businesses and services, because we don't have a town center here. You have to go up to Woodstock or else down to Clackamas. And we would really like to have more services here that we can walk to or reach easily. But we have very little, as you've probably discovered, those of you who are, or you, Peter, you're new to here. So anyway, what's happened was the state gave us a grant of $220,000 and the city put up $30,000 to make a grant of $250,000. Oh, I forgot to say what the third aspect of the grant investigation. It has to do with displacement. And once you start putting in sidewalks and bettering transit and improving the streets and so on, you invite gentrification that starts pushing the local population out. And so a large part of the grant is going to be devoted to trying to figure out a way to keep that from happening here. All right, so to go back to the numerical part, now that COVID has hit, the city's revenues have plunged, and in PBOT, there's been a lot of internal struggle to try to cope with the loss of revenue. So there are people who are going to be asked to retire early. Others will have their hours cut back. Still others are going to be laid off. So the staff asked the state of Oregon if it would be all right to divert the main consultant funding in the grant to the staff at PBOT, to the project managers in the staff that work with them, to help to make up for the funding pain inside the department. And the state said that would be fine. And so the two project managers, who are Marty Stockton and Zeph Wagner, so remember those names, we're gonna get to know these people well. They're going to continue as project managers, but they are also now going to take on the work that the consultant was going to do, which was going to be a lot of data collection and the public outreach. And so they're going to be working very hard, and while still trying to do the rest of the work that they are supposed to do with their jobs. So the state reduced the amount of the grant because staff bills at a lower rate per hour than consultants do. But but PBOT will still contribute its 30,000, and it's thrown in 10,000 for a transit consultant and 20,000 to pay some entity like Hacienda or Rose Community Development to work on the anti-displacement part of the grant. And so we're actually ending up with $5,000 more, if I've done my math right, than we had before. So the staff is taking a resolution outlining the changes in who's doing what and when and so on to, not so much when, but what, to City Council probably on October 28th. The BDNA has approved that. So I'm going to prepare that and I'll submit it, but also the informal alliance that we have amongst 4 neighborhoods here called SEAM, Woodstock, Brentwood, Darlington, Foster, Powell, and Mount Scott, Alita, will, I think we're going to submit a joint letter as well, a joint letter of support saying, yes, this new way of approaching the grant is fine, please do it. So that's, I'll be working on the letter part. And then the project managers have asked us to begin conveying to them the things that we think are worthy of attention in the planning effort to come. And so I've noted a few of them: speeding a neighborhood speed watch possibility. A neighborhood speed watch, for those of you who haven't been at an earlier meeting, is it's sort of like neighborhood watch, only it's neighborhood speed watch. And there are a couple of examples in the US. I haven't studied them thoroughly yet, but residents work with the police and borrow their speed radar guns and help collect data. And the police, these radar guns are able to capture license plate numbers. And so then you can identify who's speeding, and they get a letter or repeated letters from the police department. And the whole idea is to let the travelers know that they are going too fast and we see them. So I would very much like to see the neighborhood speed watch possibility investigated as part of our planning effort. I'd also like to see, these are just my ideas, but then I will want to solicit from you as well. I'd like to see the streets between 52nd and 45th Avenue from rural to Knapp made into one-way streets. They're very narrow, and one of them, Ogden or Knapp, is going to be the side of a greenway. And we think that having one-way streets is going to make life easier for everybody, that not only the travelers, but also the people who live on the streets and have to come and go. We have another problem with people parking at intersections and making it impossible to see cars coming. So it's very difficult to cross intersections in some cases or make turns. We have many instances where people are blocking the use of right-of-way, the shoulders along the streets. And I use my own house as an example. I inherited, when I moved here 3 years ago, a fence that goes almost all the way to the street. And then there's a big brick mailbox that I share with my neighbor that is right on the street. So anyone who wished to walk on the shoulder will run into the fence and mailbox, and they don't belong there. But I know I could never get my neighbor to move that back because he uses the other side of the fence on his side to store his trailer and his car. And but I would like to see this looked at. And since it's hard to come by sidewalk money, and the recession isn't going to end anytime soon, but it would be nice to have shoulders of streets that you can walk along. So I'd like to see that addressed in the planning effort. I think I'd love to see some kind of work on somehow improving the energy efficiency of new houses. a new house is just built around the corner from me, and it has faces west, and it will receive all of the hot sun from July through September into October. And there's nothing about the house that's been designed to shade the windows or create any kind of, passive cooling and heating at all. So those people are going to be running their AC for about 4 months every year. And it's going to be very, very hot and blinding and so on. And that's ridiculous. Doesn't need to be that way. And I would also like to see the planning effort address tree preservation and canopy increase. So if you all could think about what you would like to see in Brentwood Darlington's future that would make this a more wonderful community to live in and walk around in and bike in and drive in and whatever, would you please email me? You can just send emails to bdlanduse@gmail.com, and please start sharing ideas with me, and I will pass them on to the project managers at PBOT, who will begin their work, in December, I think, is their get started time. So we have a big opportunity here with a consultant out of the way to build relationships directly with planners at PBOT. And I think we need to take advantage of it and help them and just work with them to make the planning effort be really fruitful. So if you would, please begin sharing ideas with me and ask others, ask your neighbors to share ideas. bdlanduse@gmail.com. All right, so are there any questions or comments about the TGM grant?
I have a question,
Hi, Pam.
Stephanie. This is Pam. Yes. So are these two separate items under the TGM grant update? You talked about drafting a letter of support for the staffing plan that's going before the city council. And I'm assuming that's coming up, we said October 28th, I believe, in your newsletter. So that's soon. And then as far as conveying concerns, is there a deadline on that? I'm assuming we're not doing that as part of the hearing on October 28th,
Oh,
correct?
I see. Thank you for clarifying that. No, that's not part of the hearing. No, this is something that we can work on over the next few months. They're not going to begin work until, I believe, December. And we can keep suggesting ideas and thoughts all along. But so, no, you're right. This has nothing to do with the letter of support.
So my initial thought is if we're conveying a letter of support for the resolution, perhaps rather than just a blanket endorsement of what the staff is proposing, that if we had an opportunity to review their work plan, we might want to highlight some items that are of particular concern or interest to us, because this is an opportunity to get those concerns before the city council as part of our endorsement of the resolution. What do you think?
Well, from what I understand from Marty, the scope of work really hasn't changed. It's who's doing it, but I can get in touch with her and verify that. I'm often wrong, and I admit it, and I will see what I gathered from her is in fact correct. But the purpose of doing this is to begin this communications relationship. I would gather from what you're saying, that this is what is of particular interest to us.
And to push back a little bit, early on we got the impression that the staff Marty and Zeph were not particularly interested in a robust public involvement process with the neighborhood associations. So if there's, a diplomatic way of expressing our interest in having that be a robust process, perhaps there's a way of weaving that in. Just
Okay. No, that can't hurt, and I hadn't thought about that. So I think sounds promising. So let me see whether the scope of work has changed, and regardless of whether it has or not, I mean, we can still say that we want to. We're very concerned that we have a very good, strong public outreach effort, and good very thorough consultation with residents and so on.
And is the scope of work posted somewhere on our website for us to look at?
Is the TGM scope?
Right.
I don't think so.
I don't, okay. I mean, I'd be interested in looking at it again.
Okay. Okay, fine. Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, so Nancy Chapin, are you raising your hand? Nancy? Oh, I guess not. Okay. All right. Is there anybody else who would like to comment on the TGM? And Peter, you have said, you've given us, all right. Now I'll make sure that we send out the scope of work. Okay. All right. I'm looking at the chat here. Okay. Very fine. All right. So if you, we'll take this up at the next meeting as well. And so we'll have a chance to discuss the scope of work at the next meeting. And, okay, to go on to Parks and Rec and the proposed operating levy, I had concluded from the research I did that the operating levy would not cause an increase in property taxes paid, that it would merely shoulder aside other levies, which would then take in less money because of the presence of the parks operating levy. But Amanda Fritz, who attended our board meeting, informed us that that is true only of some residents, and some residents are paying the full amount that the law allows. And for them, they will not have to pay anymore, even if the operating levy for parks becomes part of the property tax. And she said the way you know about this, just a minute, let me see. The way you know whether you're paying the full tax is whether you have an itemized property tax bill that lists all the levies, the child levy, the soil and water, the Portland Fire and Police, the urban renewal, Port of Portland, Metro, the library, and so on. It happens that it appears that I am paying the full amount required or allowed or by law, and I personally would not pay more, if I understood correctly, if the operating levy were inserted into my bill. But there are others who haven't reached their upper limit, and they would have to pay more. And Amanda Fritz was going to send us information so that I could explain this better to people, but we haven't. Today is already Thursday night, and we have not received anything from her. So Chelsea Powers, who's the chair of the Neighborhood Association, she did reach out to Commissioner Fritz's office 2 days ago to say, please send us this information, but we don't have it now. So all I can say is that if you have a property bill that looks pretty short, sparse, you're probably going to have to pay more, on average $13 a month more, if the operating levy is approved. But if your property tax has a long list of of entities that are sharing the tax, then you would not have to pay more. So Pam, is that your understanding? Do I have that correct from the board meeting? You're muted. You're muted. We can't hear you. We can't hear you.
No, okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
So yes, that's your recap of what Commissioner Fritz explained is my understanding as well. I went out and looked at the online version of the Multnomah County property tax, and I couldn't find a full itemization, at least for the forthcoming year. So I wasn't able to determine whether I would be paying more under the park levy or not. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, all right. As soon as we get this information from Commissioner Fritz, I will send it out to the full email list for our newsletter here, and we'll let you know. So
may I say something?
Please,
we
Anna, yes.
We had one person in our Woodstock neighborhood, and he did a little investigation. So it's very hard to find information that's kind of conveying all the well, things that might happen from it. But what we found is that there are only 2% of properties in the woods already at the limit of the taxes, so most people will have to pay extra. And the $13 dollars a month, that's a median kind of amount. It really depends on what the on the value of your property. It's really related to the taxes because it's a percentage and not a fixed amount.
Right. Oh, okay. Thank you for that information. That's good. Right. Yeah, I know. I just threw out the 13 because it appears in a lot of the newspaper articles about this. And but yes, right. That's a
yeah. And we had Commissioner Fritz yesterday presenting this, and so she said like that's the best thing they can do right now in order to keep the parks going. Mm-hmm. So the original ideas were completely different oriented, and I don't know if she told that to you too. Probably she did the same thing, but it sounds like they're all not happy. But in order to keep it going under the circumstances with COVID, that's the only possibility they have, and they see.
Yeah, apparently there was the Parks Department management worked very hard with City Council and trying to think of all the different alternatives possible. And this did seem like the best. It gives them 5 years to come up with something better. So it's not a permanent levy. It will just go for 5 years. So hopefully they would like to set up a district like the library district. I don't know what that means. So I'm just using the term that they use, or that they're hopeful of setting up a district. But that takes a long time to do. There wasn't time to do it in the recent months. The COVID hit fast, and there just hasn't been time to do the necessary work for a district. Okay, so 98% are gonna pay a little more in their taxes, or maybe more than a little more, depending on the value of their houses.
Yeah.
Okay. This is the assessed value, not the market value.
Yes.
So it'll be much lower than market value. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Anna. Okay, well, I'm hoping that we can get some written things from her that I can forward to you. Okay, so let's go on to Brentstock Incubators. This is this wonderful group of people up in the northwest corner of Brentwood, Darlington, that has dedicated itself to improving the rights of way along some of the semi-improved and unimproved roads up in that area. So they're clearing away invasive plants, planting gardens, making little parks with benches and bulletin board, and it's lovely, lovely idea. So they have applied for a grant, a placemaking grant to Metro, and you were instrumental in that, Anna, right? Did the grant
Yes.
get submitted in time? I'm sure it did.
Oh yeah, I mean barely, but yes.
Okay, fine. And what?
So it was really, I remember that the applications were due in January, and I don't know why it's this year moved to the beginning of October. So
Oh,
we had only a week to prepare, but I think it's relatively easy to you know, to make the case for the Brandstock incubators. Because I met them, you know, after you told me about the group. I ran into them on the street and had a very interesting talk with Scott Goodman, who is the instigator.
that's right.
And so we were talking a little bit, you know, even beyond the whole question of the urban planning and the safety issue of the sidewalks. And I learned that his wife, she's a teacher working with diversity groups in the school, and you know, encountered a lot of issues. And so she said, like, we really have to rethink of how we are doing outreach work to the Black, Indigenous, and people of color group, them in the streets. And there is a reason for why they are not mingling or not participating in as many activities as other people in the neighborhoods, even so they are living there. And so for the placemaking grant, we put that really in the center of the argument, that we say, like, we are combining these questions of having a very direct outreach and using these right-of-way activities, not only to improve the sidewalks and the safety of pedestrian life, but also to have, you know, this outreach component and have diversity integration activities combined with these activities. And so the Brandstock incubators, all the members that I met so far were all for it. And so this is how we shaped the grant, and I just submitted it. And I'm so happy that the Metro grant application specifically says it doesn't have to be in perfect shape. So that gave me a lot of you know, kind of drive to really submit it. And so we got, thank you, Stephanie, for being on so short notice, writing that letter and getting the support out. I wrote a letter for the Woodstock Neighborhood Association. We got a letter from the Umbrella, it's called, that they are supporting Brandstock. They're already connected as their fiscal sponsor. They said, like, of course we will participate and help you with the grant. We also got a letter of support from the, what they call, the bee pollinator group. They're already collaborating. They're giving, donating plants to Brandstock incubators, and they want to increase their collaboration. So that's happening too. We got support, not written, but since I'm also a member of the League of Women Designers, we got support from that corner, so we can work with designers, architects, urban planners. So it's not just floating crazy ideas in the air, but it has some substance to not violate what's allowed to be done. So that's basically how it sums up. We have a huge group of people coming together there and very enthusiastic. So I felt very positive and confident. to help them.
Oh, very good. And when should you hear about the grant award?
I think in January.
Okay. All right. So as one drives up Flavel and at Duke, across from the gas station there was a giant thicket of Asian
Mhm.
blackberry, which is now half gone and it's covered with straw, and there's straw bales there. I assume that that's part of the Brentstock Incubators.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a very highly visible one for those of you who haven't seen the Brentstock Incubators work. You just look for the straw bales
Yeah.
next door to the gas station.
Well, most of the work you wouldn't see. What you see is the best example probably is a garden on Duke and 50th, the community garden, where they are actually growing food, donating it to the food pantries right now. So there's always this kind of interactive component and social component involved too.
Oh, well.
And for the grant, I should mention that for the grant, we identified 4 different properties, I guess, where they already have the connections and the go from the owners of the adjacent properties.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's one thing you have to have. I mean, it's a right of way, but the owner of the property is in charge of it, so you have to have the agreement. And the city, Peabody, is updated on it. Peabody knows about all the different sites they are active.
And there's been no pushback from the city?
No. What Scott told me is he called like each time they started a project, investigated a project, or even said like we have a group of people working on those sites. They called Peabody, they called the city and said like, here we are doing this. And the city said like, yeah, just do it. And they said, don't we need permission? Don't you have to have a say in it? And the city said, no, it needs to be taken care of. And as long as you know, maintain the safety and the property well-being, you're good to go. Do not call us again.
Oh, okay. Well, that's very heartening, because I had been somewhat concerned about the liability issue, but it sounds like that's not really going to be a problem if what is done along the right of way is reasonable, sensible.
So what I said to Scott, and I think that's important to say, like, each time they start something or we start something, they need to let Peabody know at least that it's going on, that they are collaborating, because they're also planning to do like larger things in the unimproved roads, to really turn them into like little community places. So those things need a little more careful consideration. So I said, like, we need, and just for liability issues, I think it's just a good way of saying, city, we are doing this.
Right, because then if city says, okay, fine, then then you have the implicit protection from the city.
Yeah.
Not that the odds are high that anything will happen, but it's just such a litigious society that I always immediately think about that aspect. And so Pam has suggested in the chat that we could let the planners at Peabody know that we support the Brentstock Incubators as part of the TGM planning process.
Yes.
And in fact, the idea would be to spread it more widely, right? I mean, this is the example of what we would like to see throughout the EU.
I already mentioned that in the proposal. They have a section, what do you else want to reveal. And I said like, well, we think that it would be a good idea to collaborate with Brentwood Darlington and the TGM grant.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah. Because city budget are really under pressure. Right? If we are dealing with those questions already, why not combining the efforts?
Mm-hmm. And that makes every kind of sense. Right.
Because it deals with all these questions of displacement, economic growth, development, safety on the street.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just like fitting.
Anna,
So
I'm sorry, Stephanie, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Pam.
Anna, did you mention the likely amount of dollars attached to this Metro Placemaking grant?
No. Oh, so no, what Brentstock incubators, what we were asking for was, I think, $7,720.
Thank you.
Because they start at 5,000. They say like what they are funding is something between 5 to 25,000. Most of them are like what they have given out in the last years were like 10 to 12 to 15,000. So we said like we want to identify these 4 little pockets. So we have like a little chain through the neighborhood. So you have like these, not really connected, but still connected enough places to make it visible and to create that idea.
Great, thank you.
So.
And so did you spell out your outreach to the people to vulnerable populations in our area, or what? Did you have to do that?
No, I just said like that we are concerned about the outreach to groups of diversity and new methods of integration and new methods of outreach.
Well, that's something else to take up in the TGM planning process then. How do we communicate with the vulnerable amongst us, right?
Yeah,
so
we should talk about that. So I mean, I can provide you the text.
Okay.
The vocabulary.
Thank you. And so Dunya has posted in the chat, she wanted to know, she's asking, I'm not sure if it was my reception garden at Duke and 50th. Dunya, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry. My hands are wet. Yes. Sorry, I'm in the kitchen.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't know if I heard right. Was that 50th and Duke there's a garden?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because I was thinking, my thought immediately went to the community garden that's like between 60th and 62nd, but I'm not familiar with the 50th and Duke.
No, it's 50th and Duke, and it's really in the right of way. It's relatively wide.
Okay.
And it's like a lot of green. There's a little, they call it kiosk, where they leave little notes.
Oh, okay. I do know. I know that spot. I'm not, because I'm on 70th. I'm not there all that often, but yes, I do know what you mean. Thank you. Thanks for the clarification.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, very fine. All right. So yeah, I would love to see the grant proposal at your convenience. And then thank you. I think it's a very nice idea to incorporate this whole concept into into our list or into the TGM grant planning process. So thank you for suggesting that, Pam. Okay, any other comments on Brentstock incubators and pollinators and removing invasives and making little parks and so on? Okay, so let's go on to the problem of speeding on Flavel Drive, Southeast Flavel. Pam, is that pronounced Flavel or Flavel?
Flavel. Flavel.
Flavel, okay, Flavel. We've had a problem there, and we got our own radar gun and got some data which was reported in the September newsletter, and we've passed it on to PBOT, and we've gotten a response that working on speeding problems is something ideal for addressing in the TGM planning process. But one of the planners, Scott Cohen, though, said that they want to, they're going to try to change the speed limit at Flavel from 25 miles an hour to 20. But since no one's paying attention to the 25 mile per hour speed limit, I don't really understand whether going to 20 will help, but we'll see. At least it's some response from the city. And and we want speed bumps, and we want a crossing beacon at the park, and so on. So those are things that Scott recommends taking up in the TGM planning process. So we'll be sure to keep that very front and center. We're having speeding problems on other streets too, but this is a problem throughout Portland with the reduction in traffic. There's more room to speed and people are taking advantage of it. And apparently this is happening all over the United States. It's not just here in Brentwood, Darlington. I'm not sure what the city is doing about it. Our police are kind of distracted right now with other events here. And I don't know that they're punishing speeding. I don't think they are, but I have no idea. The reason I don't think so is I keep seeing speeding. So you think if there's sufficient punishment, the speeding would be reduced. But in any case, there's a part of Flavel that goes down the hill from it's the intersection at Harney, Clatsop, and 52nd. If you go down the hill there to the south, you're out of Portland and you're into Clackamas County, I guess. And that speed limit there is 35 miles an hour. So we're going from 35 to suddenly 25. And now the city of Portland is saying, no, let's go from 35 to 20, which isn't a great idea. So we need to work on reducing the speed limit in that county section between Johnson Creek Boulevard and that intersection of Harney and Clatsop. And so Scott has given us he's working on getting us a contact down at Clackamas and urging us to reach out because he thinks that they might respond better to individuals reaching out as opposed to the bureaucracy of the city of Portland tapping them on the shoulder and saying, you know, this your speed limit is out of it's much too high for the kind of street that we've got here, which is through a residential area. So I'm going to be looking into this and trying to decipher Scott's email a little bit more. There are a couple of things I don't quite understand, but anyway, we're going to keep working on it. And whatever we learned from working on Flavel Drive, then we'll be able to apply elsewhere. But so even in advance of the TGM, we're going to reach out to Clackamas County. And when I think it's safe again, we'll get out the radar gun and continue to get data on the speeding there. And as I said, I'm going to be looking into the details of a neighborhood speed watch, but I just haven't had time yet. But we'll work on this in advance of the TGM planning process. Okay, so one of our attendees here was concerned about speeding on the streets here. Is that person, was that Nancy or was it Dunya?
I think it was me. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because that's how I first got connected with this group is I'm one of the admins for the People of Brentwood Darlington Facebook groups, and somebody, the name eludes me, but somebody was posting photos of themselves taking with their radar gun, taking speed.
Ryan
Yeah.
Ernst, right. Uh-huh.
Okay. Yeah. So I was like, oh, I would love to do that.
Okay,
so
well,
yes, that is definitely something that has been very much concerning me over the last many months.
Okay, well, we're going to be working on it.
Okay.
I wanted to not use the radar gun for a little while, at least up until the election, because I don't want any resident getting in trouble with another resident who thinks it's a gun or they're being spied on or whatever. There's too much violence in the air. But I've got the radar gun right behind me on the shelf, and it's a lot of fun to use, and we'll be using it again. It's very valuable.
Yeah.
We can use it all over Brentwood, Darlington, or and loan it to adjoining neighborhoods as well. It's very useful. And
anything I can do to help with that, I'm more than willing to. I love to write emails. I write great emails. So anything I can do, let me know. Direct me in the, you know.
Thank you. That's great to know. Okay.
Yeah.
Super. All right. Thank you very much. Okay. I know that Mount Scott Alita is having problems with speeding on Woodstock, and they're trying to set up a meeting with the city, and I'm hoping I can be part of that just to hear how the two sides approach the problem and what the city has to say, and what the residents have to say. So I can tell you about that after it happens. Okay, so all right, Dunya, I am going to call on you to help with the speeding, so that's great. I'm going to
please do
call on Peter to help me understand zoning, and that's great. Thank you. And Pam, I call on you all the time to help me learn things. So anyway, okay, let's go on to the Ogden Knapp Greenway. This is for those of you who might not know, that we are supposed to acquire a greenway sometime in 2021 that runs from 82nd Avenue, basically, to 45th Avenue, and eventually onto the Bybee Max station on the Orange Line. And so the part that we're going to get first runs from 82nd to 52nd. It's going to be starting 82nd, it's going to run along Ogden. It's going to go through the park and then continue on Ogden. And so we've been asking the city to make that change. So we're working on that and trying to change the route of the Greenway. In the meantime, because of COVID, PBOT adopted a policy of turning all its greenways into what they call slow streets, where they're trying to discourage through traffic and slow even the local traffic, and make it possible for people to walk and scooter and wheelchair and whatever, bike on the greenways, and so that they're really truly sharing the streets with cars. And so they've put up big orange, they're like giant fat cones and signs, and they, in order to create these slow streets, and they decided to do this on our future greenway. So it's not a greenway yet, and they've instituted signage all the way to 45th Avenue from 82nd. And by and large, it's worked well according to anecdotal evidence that I've heard. But at 52nd Street, I guess made some people angry because at least one sign has been ripped into little shreds and thrown to the side. And there's been spray painting of the barriers, and it looks like a truck ran over one of the big fat cones, and somebody keeps moving them and just setting them aside. So it's just happening in this one area. So I'm just wondering, it seems like that there's a communication problem, in the sense that the people in that area maybe don't know about greenways, never heard of the slow streets, and just objected to the sudden descent upon their world of these barriers and signs and so on. And so I'm hoping that in the future, and maybe this is another thing for the TGM, is having the neighborhood association play a larger role in communicating with residents. I feel that PBOT just came in and put up the signs and didn't really have any outreach to anybody. And on the other greenways that are officially greenways, people know that they're greenways. Here, we don't have a greenway, but it was treated as one as far as slow streets are concerned. And so there was no intervening time where you accept the change, you learn about it, and you accept the change to your street, and then you move on to one more level, which is the slow streets. So I'm hoping that in the future, maybe we can play some role in communicating with people and explaining that to them, the benefits of these things, and then have less anger and less damage and so on. So we recently, Pam and I recently participated in a conversation sponsored by the Lents Neighborhood Association on the outreach problem. And Pam, could you kind of review what we talked about and where we ended up in that discussion?
Well, I think it was just the first of many such discussions that Lens is trying to build a coalition around grassroots definition of what adequate public involvement is at all levels of government. I think my own personal observation, which seemed to be echoed by other members on that forum, is that in recent years, this public involvement process has really been professionalized within government jurisdictions and often very tightly framed, which tends to not allow a lot of room for creative input from the affected neighbors. So I think that was the general consensus of opinion, and I believe they're going to hold additional virtual meetings.
Oh, okay, thank you very much. I appreciated your summary very much. So yeah, no, I think this is just one little example, at least in part of our neighborhood, where better outreach could have had a better outcome. So I think just the culture, neighborhood culture on the other side, I mean, to the west of 52nd, is very different from what's in my side, within a few blocks on my side. And whenever I visit Anna, I'm very surprised to see her neighbors come over there. Oh, they're so friendly, and they stop to talk, and they're curious, what are you doing here? And on my side, no one would ever, ever these are closed doors, and people are very reserved and watchful behind their curtains, and they don't want to interact. And it's like another world in this little block of in this area, maybe between I don't know, the big campground and down to Flavel Drive maybe, and then a few blocks in, maybe 3 or 4 blocks. It's another culture, absolutely. And I'm always astonished to see the difference. And so that's where this, the slow streets anger, was displayed. Mm-hmm. So, okay, well, anyway, enough of that. I'm looking forward to more of these discussions with Lens as to what is effective outreach, and because I think we can improve it. So,
Stephanie, if it helps you, there was a lot of damage done on 45th and Knapp on the signs too, and on the barriers.
Oh, really?
And,
that's interesting.
Yes, and there were you know, I mean, 45th's got this redo with their parking and their bike lanes and having the wavy, curvy thing, and they put these white little poles in. So you would have to go around and slow down to see the bikes. Car drivers, truck drivers are very hostile, and most of these white poles are gone. So,
Okay.
and personally, I saw one gigantic truck, like a gigantic truck, and he drove up from Johnson Creek on 45th, and he purposefully ran over all these white little poles.
You know, I saw that as well too, a flatbed truck going up the hill on 45th, deliberately drove next to the pole so that the flatbed hit every single one going up the hill.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was again, that might have been in part an outreach problem. I don't think a lot of effective work was done to try to explain to people what, or engage them in redesigning the street there within the budget that was allowed. And I think it was kind of a top-down process. And so we are seeing a lot of anger, but okay, but that's interesting. The slow streets signs and so on were abused at 45th and Knapp. Huh? Okay. Very interesting. Okay, thank you. And so has anyone else who's at the meeting have experience with the slow streets walking in Brentwood, Darlington? Have you walked on Knapp or Ogden?
Yeah. Stephanie, if I may. You know, I'm a bike rider, right? So I'm part of, like, I go to those meetings of like Bike LUTC and some other groups that are active about improving the bike riding conditions in Portland. And this seems to be a very common theme, which is bike riders versus cars and especially trucks, which nowadays seem to become a political statement as well. So it's kind of heightening with intensity. So I'm not surprised to hear about that destruction, and I'm not sure it's just outreach, to be honest with you. I think there's more to it, especially right now. It seems to have a lot of deeper levels of conflict there. But in the bike riders world of Portland, this has become very common, a hostility of bike riders versus cars.
Oh, it's so unfortunate. Oh my God.
I live right by Ogden, and that has, I mean, people are moving those signs and the big cones on a daily basis, because we've noticed like people just racing on Ogden, both from 52nd up, not 52nd. We see it from the school, so like from 62nd through 72nd and then through 80 to 82nd. But on the other hand, we do have construction, like we're like on 68th and Ogden. They're building two structures, two new houses there, and so you have semis that are needing to come through, and you know they come through on Ogden, and so they move everything. And so you know when they come through, they're taking the signs and the cones and moving it to the side and not putting them back. So, and that's pretty much daily, you know, and I understand they need to come through, and they're coming off of 72nd and turning to get to that site. But, you know, if they're coming in through the morning, then that intersection of 72nd and Ogden, then, you know, people aren't going to see it as being something they need to slow down for.
I see. Okay, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And again, since it's not an official greenway yet, there aren't any other signals, right, to tell people this is a special street. And so, okay, well, we'll need to see what happens here. But I think I'd like to talk to some of the planners and just say, you know, we're just seeing a lot of hostility here, and maybe they have some suggestions. I don't know. We'll have to see. Okay. Well, thank you very much for your observations. So it's happening at more than just nap and 50 seconds. So that's helpful to know. Okay. All right, so I'm just going to go on quickly to trees in Brentwood Darlington. I need to learn the tree code, and I will, but I have trees on my mind right now because I look out and I see lots of big trees dying apparently from lack of water, and so this I'm worried about them, and I want to find out from the tree department whether one can whether the tree department can get in touch with property owners who are letting their trees die from lack of watering and make them water. I just have no idea what's possible. So, but I do want to find that out. I have a case right 2 doors down from me, renters whose trees are dying, but the renters don't water the trees, and I assume the renters have to pay for their own water use. They're not watering the trees, and but the landlady isn't arranging for watering the trees, and she keeps spending money cutting down this dead tree and that branch and so on, but not watering. And so I think there's something wrong there. I just want to find out how to try to preserve some of these trees, and because they shouldn't have to be dying. And then I'm also concerned about future development and whether we will have enough room in yards to place trees. And again, I'm looking at an example right around the corner from me where there's this gigantic house that completely fills the yard. It's 5 feet on each side of the house and at the back of the house from the property line. It's a completely constricted. I mean, there's no way you can put any kind of trees in that narrow space. And little handkerchief. And they've got one spindly tree that I think is required, per new house, off to one side by the fence. Okay, Anna, yes, go ahead.
I have a question, or two rather. One is with watering, there are many groups out who are promoting not watering because it's wasteful of water. So I think there needs to be an investigation what's the stance, because I agree it shouldn't dry out. And then there was another how do you call it, like observation study coming out of, I think it was PSU, where they investigated the microclimates and the temperature differences in different areas of the town. And so the very high temperatures and overheating happens in poorer areas where there is not a lot of upkeep in the landscape, where there are not a lot of gardens, where there's a lot of industrial areas or large markets where you don't have green spaces, don't have the tree canopies cooling it down. So I'm wondering if somewhere within the city, if they are having a larger discussion about how to deal with the landscaping and the water retention question.
Okay, well, that's something to investigate. I sure don't know the answer. And
because I don't think these two things can be separated from each other. And the trees, the Friends of Trees, they are promoting a lot of tree planting, but it only gets picked up in certain areas.
Mm-hmm. And right, if we don't water all these trees that they plant. A lot of them are going to die. And Portland Parks is giving away 1,200 trees right now. And I thought that's kind of ironic too, because if we're not watering,
So I know that because I was working on a policy study in Berlin, far away, when they closed down the little airport, and it's not little, but comparatively little, in the center of town. And they sought to open it up for housing and new construction. And the study then, before they started, they said like, well, let's just see what happens with our city climate. And it turned out that it was one of the most important areas for cooling down the air within the city, and for having air movement. Berlin is built like a star, so you have these large streets coming into town or going out of town, and those are the fresh air circulations. And if they would have overbuilt this airport area completely, there would have been a huge disturbance of the city climate. So they decided to only build along the edges and keep the green space in order to have the air cooling, the humidity regulation, and the right microclimate ventilation going on. So I don't really have a lot of time to investigate that for Portland, but I think there needs to be someone sitting on that. Maybe that can be, University of Oregon or Portland State, starting these kind of investigations.
I think it is very, very important. I agree with you that, okay, well, let's see what's going on. Pam has noted in the chat, Friends of Trees has a program for watering new trees. Perhaps that model could be adopted for existing trees affected by drought. Portland Water Bureau also provides discount for mature trees on residential properties. I didn't know that. As a financial incentive to keep trees alive. Well, that's very good to know, but I wonder how many people, I didn't know that. Probably few people know about that. So, okay, that's very good to know. Thank you, Pam and Anna. And yeah, I mean, trees has got to be part of our TGM planning process too. And so maybe that's through that process, we can start the kind of investigation and planning that you're talking about, Anna, to preserve green space and increase canopy and not just have a concrete and asphalt Brentwood Darlington or whole area here. Thank you. Okay, any other comments on trees in Brentwood Darlington or nearby? Okay, fine. We'll just go on to the Smell My City Air Quality Reporting app recommended by Cascadia Action. I put this map on my phone, and so I'm all ready to use it. It can be, it's very easy to use. So if you smell something strange in the air, you can report it using this app. It's very easy. And it goes to Cascadia, to Clean Air Portland, which uses it for advocacy to hammer the city over the head with, better air quality. I mean, to hammer the city and try to get better air quality policy out of the city. So I urge you to put it on your phone. It's free. And there, if you go to the menu part, you can see an explanation of who's supporting it, which is 7th generation, and then a climate research place at Carnegie Mellon University. And so I think that those of us who live near precision cast parts would like to have this on our phones, so that if we see clouds coming from PCC and they smell funny, we can report it right away. Okay, so it just go to your app source on your phone, and you can install it right away. And then I just wanted to tell you quickly, the residential infill project will become applicable on August 1st in 2021. But, and so I plan to master it before then so we can talk about what its effects will be here in Brentwood Darlington. And we need to know, because of the TGM planning process, we need to know what its effects are going to be here. I do know that parcels of land that front on a gravel road may not have multiple, are not allowed to have multiple units on them. So that's one restriction that I saw. I don't know yet about parking, and planners have said that our area is going to be more afflicted with, or bear the brunt of the changes that the residential infill project will bring over time than most of the city. Montevilla, Brentwood, Darlington, and oh my gosh, the other, I forgot the other neighborhood, are going to see the most impact from the residential infill project. But I would like to know exactly how that's going to play out. But in the meantime, there's already a big argument over water meters, and it appears that if individual units have individual water meters, that individuality can help residents apply for water discounts if they're low income people. But you have to have an individual water meter. But apparently having an individual water meter to each in, say, a little 4-unit cottage cluster costs $13,000 per house. I can't understand that, but that seems to be agreed on. And so there's an argument going on right now over whether it's absolutely necessary to have these individual water meters when there are very low cost, high-tech ways of measuring water use now. And it shouldn't be necessary to raise the price of a unit by $13,000 by installing a water meter. So I have a lot to learn about this, because first of all, I can't believe that it's $13,000. I just don't understand that. And then I would like to learn what some of the alternatives are. But one of the goals of the residential infill project is to provide housing that's more affordable than what we're seeing built right now. And so the water meter thing becomes an important part of that discussion about how we implement the residential infill project. So I'm going to be learning more about this, but I just wanted you to know about it because it's kind of interesting. And I just don't know. I guess I've been so browbeaten by the Trump administration for 4 years. I have a hard time believing anything anymore. So that's why I'm having trouble believing $13,000 for a water meter. But we'll see. Maybe that's so. I will find out and I will report to you later. So does anyone know anything about water meters and their cost? No, okay. Not many, I don't think that many people do. And, all right, let's go on.
We know that about Germany, and in Germany they are not that expensive. And it's by law that each unit has to have its own water meter.
Well, you can see why you would, it's a good idea to have individual metering of water. People can protect themselves from others who overuse if they have their own individual water meters, and then you can also see how much you're using. So Amanda Fritz, commissioner, is the one arguing for having a water meter at every single residential infill project unit. And then there's pushback from people in Cully and Habitat for Humanity and some others who say it's too expensive. But
well, the question is why it is so expensive, because the technology is not expensive.
well, that's my impression as well. So I'm going to find out about this and see what the problem is. But
So
13,000 is
Stephanie,
crazy. Yeah.
this is just a guess, but maybe they're not saying that the water meter actually costs 13,000. They may be using it as a cost allocation measure, taking the entire water system and then loading it by meters, which might have made sense at some time in the past, but not with increased density. So, I mean, that might be one explanation. I don't know.
Oh, okay. I see. Sort of see. You'll have to explain to me again later. But okay. All right. Well, we'll find out. It's an interesting little question here. Then to go on to Flavel and 52nd, that awful strip mall with the terrible parking lot and that old sign with the rusting cables and so on is up for sale. And the owner, Lei Tuan, who lives in North Carolina, is finally selling this property. And so you may have noticed that the sign is all of a sudden it's been painted and cleaned up, and those rusting cables have been removed. And there's something, when I first got here, I tried to get the city to get him to paint the sign and remove the cables, but they said they couldn't. But now he wants to sell it, so now he's made the sign look really good. The thing I'm really concerned about, though, is that it's zoned commercial mixed use 1, I think it is, which allows for residential use as well as commercial use. And I am worried because so much apartment construction around the city right now. I'm worried that that commercial lot could be replaced with an apartment building. And Marty Stockton told me, yes, that is possible. It's legal. So she wants us to keep an eye on it and tell her what's going on with it. And so I'll be watching the different, the permit tables that I look at and see if I can start getting some hints about what's going to be happening with that property. On the east side of the property, there's an informal car repair operation going on, and you may have seen all these cars lined up at the fence there, facing into the fence, from just filling up the whole area there, from the street to the back fence. That area is actually not part of the property, and it's the owner is dividing it into 2 little lots, and he's going to build 2 narrow houses there. So that's in that area where the where the sign is, and then the fence. Though that's going to become two houses. So learning that is what made me start worrying about what might happen to the rest of that little commercial center. I would hate for it to turn into apartment housing because we have so few services already, and I don't want to lose what we have, the few that we have. But just warning you that it's a possibility. It's allowed by the zoning.
Stephanie, excuse me. I sent you an email a couple of days ago on this, and it's probably buried in your email somewhere.
I saw it, but I haven't read it yet. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, and I know time is short on today's agenda. I just want to throw out the idea that since the strip mall is currently for sale, there's some immediacy. And Anna, I'm glad you're on this call because I think you're the instigator, creative mind behind this Dream a Better Portland into existence. And so I was wondering if we could do some visioning within Brentwood Darlington about the strip mall and then submit it as part of the first round of submissions on, if I understand, is due October 22nd. And so some preliminary thoughts about that. You know, as you, I think, mentioned, it's currently a grocery store, laundromat, and hair salon in the strip mall. But is there a possibility of mixed-use development where there'd be housing, apartments on top, and similar retail down below? And then maybe there's also a diversity outreach here, because it's a very diverse intersection. You know, on one side we've got the Moose Lodge, then we have Pohala Wellness Clinic, and we have Botanis Michoacanis around the corner, and then we've got the Hispanic Church across the street, and Persian Cafe just up the street. And I know with the TGM grant, there's talk about considering a commercial town center development on either 72nd or 52nd. And I hate to have them lose sight of the opportunities on 52nd Avenue. And then also with the staffing resolution going before council, I think there was mention of Hacienda CDC and Rose Development Corporation being involved in the TGM process. And Hacienda CDC, if you go out to their website, currently has, you know, a number of social oriented apartment developments with such amenities like on-site childcare built in, and that wouldn't be such a bad thing for our little site on 52nd and Flavel. So, you know, just throwing that out there as a visioning opportunity for us. Did you want to talk at all about your project Dream a Better Portland into existence?
I can, but I see that Peter had his hand up kind of, and I don't want to cut him off.
I'm sorry, Peter. Go ahead, and then we can go to Anna. Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say quickly that if it is zoned for mixed use, it would almost certainly have ground floor retail. With most of those mixed use developments, how the region has been planning them in a lot of the kinds of plans is for exclusive commercial use at the ground floor with residential above, sort of like at Woodstock and 57th Ave, or Woodstock and 52nd Ave, some of those developments.
Yes, I understand what you're saying, but right up the street, just maybe 3 blocks up at Cooper and 52nd, there's a vacant lot, and that's been sold, and apartment building is going to be built there with no ground floor commercial. And then there's an apartment building just up the way that used to be the headquarters for the church, and that's been converted into apartments, and there's no ground floor commercial. And Marty Stockton, the people planner, told us that unless there's a town center that's specifically designed by the city cannot require a property owner to include commercial in the building plans. But so I think that, and we don't have a designed town center yet. It'd be nice if the TGM could result in something like that, but this thing is for sale now, and the TGM process hasn't even started yet. But so maybe I like the idea of visioning, and I also like the idea of talking to more people at the city, and maybe somehow talking with the new owner. We need to know the economics involved, you know, what, because whoever is going to build whatever is coming is going to want to maximize profit. And right now, apartment building is very hot in the real estate world. And you have to have a certain level of wealth in the community in order to start supporting, businesses and shops and little markets and so on. And we may not have enough income in our area to cause the landowner to say, no, I'm going to put commercial down below. And I'm painting a worst case scenario here, right? Just because I want us to be prepared, but I think maybe we can make a plan through our visioning and talk with PBOT and try to get some feel for what's possible, and maybe we can influence the owner. Huh?
I think visioning is a good idea, and I think trying to use things like a TGM grant to look at master planning that area so that those areas aren't, so that they're sort of locked into the CIP with the city for certain types of improvements that then would influence the type of development that goes there. I think that's all really smart, and we should be doing that. I was more just saying that a lot of mixed use development doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be all residential, but I can understand why that would be concerning, and we should try to do things to influence that it doesn't turn out that way, for sure.
Okay, yeah, okay, thank you, Peter. Yeah, no, I'm just worried, so go ahead, Anna. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so we had a lot of discussions with the land use committee in Woodstock with the developments on Woodstock. And I mean, the Mill Creek project, of course, has a commercial space on the ground floor. Then where their church is, that has a tiny commercial space along Woodstock. But then there are other new developments along Woodstock by, where not a big developer is behind it. It's a smaller group. It's a contractor itself who develops the property. And they are not having any commercial space. And we said, like, why on earth? I mean, you are right on Woodstock, the building right to the sidewalk. There's not even the tiniest green space. There's a bus stop right in front of it. Where I said, and it's a studio apartment right behind me. I said, like, that's like no quality of life there. And why don't you consider having commercial spaces, at least tiny ones, or have like, live workspaces or something? And they said, no, we have no experience with it. We only hear how difficult it is to deal with commercial rentals, and we don't have it in us, and we are not going to do it. And so I totally understand the fear putting forward that might happen here in Brentwood, Darlington as well. Because as you say, there is, even more concern about what kind of business could be sustained there, what kind of foot traffic do you have there, how is it organized? So I would absolutely support dreaming and wishing and producing some vision, especially with those questions of outreach and envisioning how a city can grow. Portland doesn't have those examples, so it needs to start to verbalize some kind of new ideas and to develop those visions, and then to also see how it's possible to translate. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm all for it. Please submit it to my to my collection of urban dreams.
Okay.
Also, I mean, I'm happy if it gets very how should I put it? So because my project is really like working on these two levels. One that's really like high potential dream. How do I interact? What do I envision in my everyday life from very tiny, small social interactions, all the way up to those larger questions of how traffic is envisioned and how those little city centers or sub-centers are coming together, and what are we doing there? Because I think we always have to start in those places to say, like, what do I really want to do there? And what can I also maintain as my daily routines? So yes, it's nice to envision I have this vibrant little business center there. I go there and have coffee, and I do my little paper shopping, and I do my little flower shopping, and I go and, whatever, a few groceries. But then people also have to think about, can you really do that on a daily basis? And this is a little bit what I try to figure out with my collection of urban dreams. I don't know how many of you read about it or know about it. So I created basically a website with a call for all Portlanders to envision some daily routine, some activities. So it's like an infrastructure that's not built, but it's an infrastructure of interactions. Because I believe that that's the driving force when we have new developments. And that's a really largely important portion of quality development, which no master plan, nor urban planning, nor architecture planning will ever get to. It's a very aspirational way of approaching those things, but and people seem hungry for it, I have to say. I get a lot of questions, a lot of feedback. Yes, I will post their website here.
Okay, thank you. And then, I don't know if you saw the little newsletter that I send out, but I also.
Yes, thank you so much for
Yeah.
including that.
Yeah. Okay, so while you're entering that, Maria has asked, what does it take for the city to convert an area into a commercial corridor? And I think Peter can help us with this. In the months leading up to the TGM grant proposal, what we heard from planners was talk of rezoning, but I think they have to go further and actually design an area, right? Or have some kind of an M overlay that allows the city to, as you say, lock in certain kinds of enterprises that do know, Peter? What?
So I think there's a lot of different ways that this stuff can happen, but I think at a very high level, if you can have a planning project, often funded through a grant, that will look at creating a nucleus in a particular neighborhood, then stuff builds off of that. And the city will use those plans to influence more short-term infrastructure plans of what pipes and sidewalks to put where, and it also will in turn influence developers, different types of developers, to look at certain types of areas. So I think that there's a lot of different ways you can get there, but if we have an opportunity to have some, and we have some money through a grant that is dedicated at looking at our area, I think that's very promising.
Okay, all right, that sounds good. And we've talked about 52nd Avenue and 72nd around Flavel as being candidates for the sort of thing that you're talking about, but you're more knowledgeable about actually how it would come to be. So Marty wrote that she said that, let me just read this. This is almost like Swahili to me. She said, as I've stated before, but she hadn't to me, but anyway, currently the only way to require active space commercial office or light manufacturing is through the placement / mapping of the M overlay zone. The M overlay zone is only mapped when there is a town center or neighborhood center designed. Okay, what does that mean when there is a town center or neighborhood center designed? Peter, do you know what that means?
No, not specifically. I'd need to look more into it, but I think offering some initial thoughts, I would say that it would mean that in some sort of comprehensive planning process, the city has designated a certain area as having a critical mass that creates a town center that they want to protect. So I would say maybe a good place to start there would be to look at how and why they classify certain areas as those, and then try to build a case for this area.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, so Maria, we're going to have to tell you later what what is required because we don't know yet.
So Stephanie, if I could just add in here, I mean, I thought that was part of the scope of work for the TGM grant, is to do the planning preliminary steps that would eventually be taken to the city council for adoption, creating a commercial center within the SEAM boundaries.
Yeah, no, that sounds right, but I just didn't remember. I haven't looked at the scope of work for a long time. I didn't remember the details. I remember rezoning, but okay.
I think it might certainly worth considering for the TGM to see if we can include that, or even make it one of our main points. And then a lot of it comes from it, as Peter was explaining. So I think that would be worth exploring. No?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, yes. Then we will.
Great.
Okay, it's good that we're having these discussions now before the TGM process starts, and then we'll relook. I'm going to share the scope of work with you, and we'll go from there. I'm just making a note here. Okay, very fine. Okay. All right. Well, that's basically the agenda for tonight. I don't want to lose sight of the problem of cars parked too close to intersections. Several people have suggested that I talk to some cycling organizations and see what their thoughts are on how to handle that. And then I'm going to be learning the residential infill project and sharing my knowledge with you. We are rewriting the BDNA bylaws, and so the land use section is being revised, and that will affect us somewhat, not a whole lot. It'll just make it a lot clearer what the structure of the committee is, and the purpose, and so on. So it's all good, but I won't make you have to suffer through it. I'm suffering through it with Pam, who's doing a lot more suffering than I am with that. And then I want to check in on the sidewalk infill that's heading our way. We're supposed to get solid sidewalks on both sides of Duke and, let's see, on the Brentwood Darlington side of Duke Street, and then on both sides of Flavel Street between 52nd and 82nd. So that's supposed to be happening sometime in 2021. And then the Greenway, where the signs are, everything are being trashed or moved out of the way and whatever, is actually going to be implemented in 2021 along with the sidewalk infill projects. So I will check on that and try to find out where things stand. I'm sure there's delay now just because of COVID and the economy, but I will let you know. But I just want to always have a section in the agenda that stacks up things that we've talked about and that need to still be done or are being worked on. Okay, so is there anything that you all would like to bring up that we should address in future meetings or even talk about right now?
Stephanie, you cover all the problems we have. You do so much research. It's very hard to come up with extra.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. Well, thank you for saying that. I'm learning a lot. I have so much to learn. So this is very educational for me to range around over these different topics. And but I just want to make sure that I'm not the one that's just totally dominating the discourse and the agenda. So if you have ideas for what we should be doing, and even if we can't do them right away, I would like to get them onto the list and make sure that we address them, because I don't want to be a dictator here. So, okay, all right. Well, there being no other business to discuss, then I will adjourn the meeting. And thank you so much for attending. It's always fun to talk with about all these kinds of projects and subjects are very interesting to me. Peter, thank you for joining us. And Dunya, thank you. Nancy is gone, but I'm sure she'll come back next time. And Jen is gone, but she said that she would like to come back. But yes, yeah, thank you so much. And I'll see you at future meetings, and take care, and send ideas to Anna.
Stephanie, I have a quick question for Peter.
Sure.
Are you a parks planner with Walton Hills and Parks and Recreation?
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay. So we now have a parks expert as well.
Oh boy.
Peter,
Yeah.
like, what did I do signing up for this meeting?
Yay, glad you joined us.
Yes, yeah, no, that's just delightful. Thank you, Peter. All right, thank you, everybody. Good night, stay safe, take care, and I'll see you soon. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
And Maria, thank you. Oh, wait, I want to save my chat. Okay, all right.
I'm gonna stop.
Maria, thank you so much.